first things first, again, welcome back to the WorkTango webinar series. If you've been here before, if you're new, it's very, very nice to have you. My name is Rob Catalano. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer at WorkTango. And we put these on really to build a community of business leaders, HR folks, leaders in general, really just to connect around things that are changing and happening in our workplace. And I think what's really interesting is more than ever, things have been changing a lot in our worlds. And we just really do this to bring people together and also bring in fantastic speakers that are super passionate about topics related to the workplace. So before I do introduce our speaker, Jill, I did want to mention a few items for just housekeeping. First things first, if you have any issues, need help, you want to, give Jill a shout out during the chat, feel free to do it in the chat section. But when we get to questions and answers at the end today, please put those in the Q&A. It's a lot easier to manage, to work through, and we might get lost in all the chats that's coming in. Some people are even saying, hi, Jill. You know some folks there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But just a recap for the folks that have come in, if there's anything you need or just want to kind of chat, then feel free to do it in the chat. We're a very interactive bunch, or what we've seen in the past in our community. But if you do have questions, then what we'll do is at the end of the session, we're hoping to leave at least 15 minutes to have a conversation with Jill as well. So we appreciate everyone's interaction. And Jill, just from the past, I think there'll be a lot of questions. Usually this group isn't sitting on their hands, not wanting to dig a little deeper. So I'm excited for that.
Fantastic. And it's kind of scary because I'm looking at everything that people are binge watching and I've never heard of any of it.
You know what?
So maybe that means I work too much.
Oh, you know what? It's okay to take a break and watch some shows. There's a lot here I haven't seen either. So I'm
excited for you.
Thanks a lot, Jill. So I already introduced myself, and I'll kind of come in at the end when it comes to questions, but I did want to introduce our speaker, Jill. Tell me the right pronunciation of your last name. I never get it right.
Christensen.
Christensen. Okay, cool. Jill is, and I've seen Jill speak live at a number of events in the US, and we're really excited to have her on today. And Jill's a strategic big picture thinker with 3 decades of experience bridging the gap between senior leaders and employees and transforming workplace cultures. She's helped thousands of leaders improve business results by re-engaging employees. I love this. A natural risk taker with a bold, self-confident leadership style and a polished presence, Jill has executive level Fortune 200 experience in multiple firms and has consulted in 20 different industries. Best-selling author, international keynote speaker, holds a 6 Sigma Green Belt, and was named a top 101 global engagement influencer. Actually, Jill, we share that title. I was also on that list. So
fabulous.
Have you on. And I think what's more interesting than just the bio itself about yourself, but part of her bio also has results she's improved in organizations. Seeing companies go from 47 to 78% engagement in 6 months. Mm-hmm. Some organizations from 55 to 65% in 6 months. So I think these are the things we're really excited to have you on to learn and understand your expertise and talk about the topic today of, so you think HR owns employee engagement. So with that being said, the floor is yours. I guess I can't say floor anymore when it comes to these type of events, right? I'm so used to doing in-person.
No, it is the floor. We're still good.
All right, we're good. So the screen, the audio, the floor, everything is yours. Looking forward to chiming in later on with some of the questions.
Fabulous. Thank you for all being here. Let's get going. Amazon, the Montreal Canadiens, Netflix, the Houston Astros, Apple, the New England Patriots. So what do all of these organizations have in common? They win. And why do they win? They win because they have employees who trust senior leaders, who feel an emotional connection to the organization, and who will stop at absolutely nothing to ensure that the people who they serve, their customers and their fans, are delighted. In short, these organizations win because their employees are engaged. So when you have an amazing workplace culture and your employees are engaged, their performance skyrockets and everyone benefits. Your customers, your clients, your board of directors, your vendors, your shareholders, and the community in which you live and work. In addition, we know that your company's success is assured because organizations in the top 10th percentile of employee engagement outperform their peers 147% in earnings per share and are growing at a rate that's 90% faster than their competition. However, here is the major challenge that organizations face. They mistakenly think that they can outsource employee engagement to human resources and magically achieve these extraordinary results. And here's the flaw in that logic. Although HR owns employee engagement, it doesn't own the people who have the greatest impact on employee engagement, and that's your frontline managers. Your CEO owns your frontline managers and can get them to do things that HR cannot. It's just the truth. And for this reason, in order for you to drive massive levels of employee engagement, you must engage your CEO, who will engage your managers in your culture change journey. And so we're going to talk about exactly how you do this, but know that you can succeed if you approach employee engagement as a team. However, you will not succeed if HR is the only player on the team. And my guess is that's how many of you have been managing this up to this point. So I'd love to ask, how's that working for you? And so today you're going to leave here knowing 3 critical things: what employee engagement is, why traditional approaches don't work, and a new approach that absolutely does work. And so one of the most important takeaways from today's webinar is the definition of employee engagement. And so when your employees are engaged, again, it means they trust senior leaders and they feel that emotional connection to your company. And because of this, they go above and beyond the call of duty and give you a ton of discretionary effort. And that's the main reason why employee engagement matters. If you think about this, every single one of your workers goes to work each day and they have a choice. They can show up and do the bare minimum, right? Just what they have to do to get by, running on that hamster wheel. Or they can give you every single thing they've got and then some. So someone's saying that the slides are not advancing, but I only have 10 slides. So we're currently on the Wizard of Oz slide that talks about the bubble with employee engagement. And so you have to think about the fact that employees have this choice, right? They're going to show up and give you their all, or they're going to show up and give you scraps. How an employee is treated and the culture in which they're being asked to do their job has a major bearing on the choice that they make. So I kicked this off by saying that you can succeed if you approach employee engagement as a team. You won't succeed if human resources is the only player on the team. So a great example of a diverse team that it was totally engaged, Dorothy and her friends from The Wizard of Oz. And the reason why I like to use this classic film is because the vast majority of people around the globe have seen this movie. And so you understand their plight, their personality, what they went through, right? Think about Dorothy and The Wizard of Oz. This team of people went above and beyond the call of duty, and their discretionary effort was absolutely second to none. They were stalked by the Wicked Witch of the West. They were ambushed by winged monkeys. They were drugged in a poppy field, and Toto the dog was kidnapped. I'm guessing this sounds like a day in your workplace many times, right? Because that's the crap that we go through in the office. But through it all, they never ever quit. Why? Because they trusted the leader giving them direction, Glinda the Good Witch, and they felt an emotional connection to their mission, which was to make it to Oz and get Dorothy back to Kansas. And so, my friends, we have reams of data that show us that engaged workers sell more, they're more productive, they provide better customer service, they make fewer mistakes, they stay longer, they're more creative, they're great brand ambassadors, they're going to be running around recommending your company as a great place to work to their family and friends. However, even though we have all of this compelling data about the benefits of having engaged workers, the vast majority of organizations around the globe are failing. How bad is it? It's dismal. Oh, we got to go back. There we go. According to the Gallup organization, in the United States, 65% of employees are disengaged. In Canada, 60% of employees are disengaged. According to Gallup, around the globe, only 13% of employees are engaged. So the remainder of employees are sleepwalking through the day. They're putting in time, but no passion, creativity, or energy. They don't trust your leaders. They're not emotionally connected to your organization. They're not going above and beyond the call of duty. And many of them are giving you zero discretionary effort. And just to show you how bad it is, if 65% of the employees in your organization are engaged, you are actually best in class. That's how low the bar is set. If you score 65% on a test, you're a borderline failure. But in the world of employee engagement, if you have a 65% engagement rate, it makes you a rock star. What industries have the highest levels of employee disengagement? We tend to see that happening in IT, retail, healthcare, hospitality, which is your hotels and your restaurants, and in your contact centers. And so what do disengaged employees do all day? We know that they tend to walk around the office space. This probably is not going to be happening as much, though, now with COVID-19, because people are telecommuting. But they tend to distract lots of employees, lots of other employees from the work. They tend to hang out in the break rooms. They engage in office politics. They start rumors. They, again, just cause a lot of people to be incredibly not productive. They also spend a ton of time calling out sick, sitting at home, binge watching things like Netflix, right? Because we know that the most disengaged workers tend to be the people who are absent the most. And another thing, if you're really lucky, your disengaged workers will spend the time that you are paying them to work to write a scathing review about your organization on the Glassdoor website. And so what I can assure you is that virtually every one of your employees showed up on their first day, willing to go above and beyond the call of duty, willing to give you 110% discretionary effort. They trusted your leaders. Employee disengagement doesn't happen overnight. But what happens is we do things in the workplace culture that like chips away at a person's soul, at a person's spirit. And they wake up one day and their alarm clock goes off and they don't want to get out of bed. This can happen over the course of weeks, over months, or over years. Sometimes it happens on an employee's first day. If you have a horrific onboarding experience and then your first day is, nobody takes you to lunch, nobody shows you where the restroom is, you don't meet your boss, you don't have a PC or an email address, right? All of these things cause people to disengage instantly. And so what does it look like when the vast majority of your employees, okay, so we're talking in the US and, 2/3 of workers, in Canada, 60% of workers show up every single day and they're just on a hamster wheel going through the motions. This shows up as decreased productivity, creativity, customer satisfaction, and retention. And it also shows up as increased absenteeism, theft, safety, and quality issues. And the granddaddy of them all, it shows up as stagnant or decreased profitable revenue growth, because we know there's a direct correlation between employee engagement and bottom line results. The most profitable companies in the world are growing the fastest, and they have the highest levels of employee engagement. So if we were live, I'd be asking you right now, how many of you conduct an employee engagement survey? In the United States, the number is around 75%, but apparently only 25% of those organizations do something with the survey results. And I can tell you this, if you're not going to do something with the survey results, don't ask people to fill out the survey, because all you are doing is breeding active disengagement by asking people's thoughts and then ignoring them. So where are we on all this data? The Gallup organization started conducting the State of the American Workplace Survey about 3 decades ago. They conduct the survey every fall, and virtually no progress has been made. And so when we look at the number 30 years ago, right, telling us that 30% of employees were engaged, 30 years later, we're at 35% employee engagement. You guys, we moved the needle 5 points in 30 years. And so when you think about that, that is absolutely dismal. It basically means that the data from today, the latest data we have is 2019, was the same in 2009, was the same in 1998, was the same in 1988, right? I mean, again, it's crept up like a point every 8 years or so. That is absolutely abysmal. And, so what it tells us is that in spite of the fact that companies are spending billions of dollars on employee engagement, and in spite of the fact that we know 87% of C-suite executives say employee disengagement poses a threat to my bottom line, even though we've got all of that juicy data, companies are still not stepping up. They're not approaching this in a way that's working. And why is that? Because based on my research, organizations continue to cling to outdated methodologies to improve their culture that simply don't work. And what is the most popular outdated methodology? We're going to outsource culture change to HR. They can fix it. They can fix anything, right? That's what our senior leaders think. But the issue with that is, although HR owns culture change in 95% of organizations, HR doesn't own the people who have the greatest impact on culture change, and that's your frontline managers. So if we are no longer going to look to HR and ask them to fix this, seriously, catastrophic global epidemic of a problem, what is a strategy that actually works? This. Your senior leaders must engage in your employee engagement journey. There are no if, and, or buts about this, my friends. How do you get leaders to engage in employee engagement? That is really simple. Data. Executives love numbers. They love them. They eat them up. You don't get to be in a corner office without knowing a thing or two about the numbers. Your senior leaders are judged on a daily basis as to whether or not they can meet or exceed your organization's numbers. Executives present numbers all of the time to shareholders, industry analysts, the media, your board of directors. They love numbers. So what you've got to do is to gather all of the compelling data that you can get your hands on that shows the correlation between employee engagement and profitable revenue growth, employee engagement and increased customer satisfaction, employee engagement and increased retention. These things are going to get your senior leader to stand up and take notice. And this data exists in droves. It is all over the web. If you Google, what are the benefits of having engaged employees? You're going to see data popping up from hundreds of reputable organizations. Put some of those data pieces together, share it with your CEO. A savvy leader is going to get it, and they are going to agree not to do the work, right? Because they're busy. They're going to agree to champion your employee engagement strategy. Okay? So this is what this looks like. You got to get a senior leader on board. If it's not your CEO, it's somebody else on your senior leadership team who gets it and who is passionate about this and who agrees that they are going to partner with you, HR, and champion this. Okay? Once your CEO is on board, manager involvement. That's the next step. Your CEO or senior leader needs to lead a manager town hall meeting and communicate to your managers specific actions that they need to do in 4 key areas to drive massive levels of employee engagement. Why these 4 key areas, which we're about to talk about next? Because we know from employees that when you focus in these 4 key areas, it increases their employee engagement. So probably the most important word on this entire slide is strategy. It is so critical that you do not think about this as an employee engagement program or an employee engagement initiative, because if you call it a program, your employees are going to think it's the program du jour, here one day, gone tomorrow. In order for your employees to believe, I mean really believe, that you are serious about creating an amazing workplace culture that no one can imagine leaving, you have got to do things differently. You've got to show them that a CEO is involved, that you're getting the managers involved, that you're approaching this strategically, that you're conducting a survey, that you're sharing the results, that you're setting a one-year goal, that you're holding managers accountable for that goal. When you approach it this way, your employees are going to fill out the survey, they're going to stand up and take notice, and they're going to believe that you are serious about creating an amazing workplace culture where they can soar. Okay, you've got to throw out what you've been doing historically. You know, if the way you've been approaching it historically is, here HR, go fix this. Then HR puts together a culture action team, and then the culture action teams in each of your business units all are doing different things to engage employees. That's never going to work. The definition of culture is how we do things here. And so in order for you to create an amazing workplace culture, all of your managers need to do things here in your organization consistently. They need to create the same culture for all of their team members. That's how you're going to create one amazing culture. And so again, what we see people doing in organizations is you've got these pockets of people attempting to fix the culture, and it's inconsistent. You need all of your frontline managers going to market internally consistently in 4 key areas, again, which we're going to talk about next. And so you might be thinking right now, where'd this come from? So I worked in a large telecommunications firm and I was miserable. I didn't want to go to work every day. And so one day I said to myself, Jill, you're either quitting or you're going to do something to help. So I gathered a ton of research and I benchmarked the 15 companies around the globe that had the highest levels of employee engagement, and I looked at what they were doing. And in every single one of those companies, their senior leader was championing their employee engagement strategy. It was not being led by the HR organization. And then in every one of those organizations, they had their managers focused on creating engagement on all of their teams. But many of these companies had their managers focusing in 8 to 10 areas, and I thought that was way too much. In my opinion, I'm a 3 to 5 girl. You want to succeed? Have 3 to 5 goals. Have 3 to 5 New Year's resolutions. You cannot focus in 8 to 10 areas and think your managers are going to succeed. So I honed in on 4 areas that I believed would drive massive levels of employee engagement. And we executed on this strategy in the company in partnership with the CEO. In 1 year, we increased employee engagement 12 points and our stock rose 26%. And I'm sharing that data with you to give you hope. If we could re-engage 35,000 employees in 55 countries in an old school, 100-year-old telecommunications company that was political and hierarchical and bureaucratic, you can absolutely re-engage the employees in your firm. And so before we move on to the 4 key areas, let's talk about some of those organizations that are hitting the ball out of the park. And when I say that, I mean organizations that have like 90% employee engagement. That might not seem very high, but when you think about the global average is 13%, and when you think in the US it's 35%, and in Canada it's 40%, these organizations are hitting the ball out of the park. They're doing an amazing job. We're talking about companies like Southwest Airlines, Salesforce, Facebook, Nordstrom, Zappos, Google, SAP, Zoom Video, and Chick-fil-A. And so I just want you to think about your experiences with any of those firms. Have you ever flown on a Southwest Airlines flight? It's completely different than flying with their competitors. Have you ever bought a pair of shoes in Nordstrom? It's completely different than buying a pair of shoes in DSW. Have you ever eaten a Chick-fil-A and gone through their fast through drive-through line where they get approximately 30 cars through every 120 minutes? It's an experience like no other. And the truth is, the reason why these companies have such amazing customer experience is because their senior leaders get it. I completely understand that when you put your employees first, your employees put your customers first, and your customers feel that amazing experience, and they keep coming back, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. So there's a comment in the chat box about Chick-fil-A. I didn't say any of these organizations were perfect. There's a person in this world, there are millions of people in this world who have an issue with or could find a problem wrong with every single company. Every single company. I was on Amazon's shareholder meeting yesterday. You wouldn't believe the things that shareholders were saying to this man. It was absolutely deplorable. And so again, it's not that these companies are perfect, but these companies understand employee engagement. And so if you're looking to benchmark, these companies get what it's like to put their people first, so their people put their customers first, and their customers keep coming back for more. And so before we move on to the 4 areas where I highly recommend you focus, let's talk about what happens when you don't have an extraordinary workplace culture. And so that thing in the white circle is known as a flying monkey from the Wizard of Oz. I like to call a flying monkey a bad manager or a bad leader. So how many of you were absolutely terrorized when as a child you watched the Wizard of Oz and the flying monkeys came descending out of the castle, right? And they were screeching and they picked up Toto and they took him into the woods and Dorothy was crying. It was an absolutely horrible part of the movie. How many of you have worked for a flying monkey? If I was asking this live, 95% of the hands would be going up in the room. I think we all have. But my friends, this is not a stretch. When employees don't trust leaders, they go to work every day feeling like they are under attack. A black cloud hangs over their head and they respond by disengaging. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can choose to be seen as a tactical flying monkey or a strategic HR business partner who gets it. If you embrace a new and innovative approach, if you enroll your CEO or a senior leader in your employee engagement journey, you will be halfway to cracking the code to employee disengagement. So the first half of the strategy, get your senior leaders engaged. The second half of the strategy, your senior leader needs to engage your frontline managers and have them focus in 4 key areas that we know help drive massive levels of employee engagement. Now, you might be thinking, Jill, how could there be one model to re-engage employees in every industry, in every generation, in every country, since everyone is different? And my response, everyone is not different. Every one of your employees is a human being, and human beings are wired similarly. For the most part, what engages and inspires me engages and inspires you. What disengages and deflates you disengages and deflates me. So what does engage and inspire the vast majority of people? These 4 buckets, and employees tell us that. Starting in the upper left, your employees want to work for a company whose leaders have the confidence and courage to make great hiring decisions and to remove people from your organization who are trying to sink the boat. Second, your employees want to work for a company where their goals are aligned with the CEO's. They feel like they're making a difference. They feel like they're adding value. They feel like they're connecting to something bigger than themselves. Third, your employees want to go to work every day and have a voice and have a say at work. And fourth, your employees want to be acknowledged and appreciated for a job well done. Bottom line, in order to engage your employees or re-engage those people who have checked out, you need to fulfill your employees' basic human needs. It's that simple. And we didn't pull this out of thin air. We know that when you focus your efforts in these 4 areas, and I'm going to give you specific examples of what your managers can do in each of these 4 areas, you will drive massive levels of employee engagement because your employees' innate needs will be met. So quickly, I want you to think about something. Think about a relationship that you were in that you left, okay? A friend, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a spouse. anything. Why'd you leave that relationship? Chances are you left that relationship because your needs weren't being met. Okay? People don't file for divorce because they're happy. They're filed for divorce because something is missing. Workers and companies, it's the same exact dynamic, right? You're in a relationship. Your employees are in a relationship with you. They expect certain things from you. And the company is in a relationship with the employee. They expect you to do your job every day and to be the employee that it needs you to be to meet its goals. The minute either side feels like their needs are not being met, they can sever those ties. And that's what we see employees doing in droves. Prior to COVID, turnover was at an all-time high. And I also believe, in all honesty, that we're going to continue to see high levels of turnover, because even though COVID-19 is upon us, usually the people who leave an organization are your high performers. These people tend to have a lot of self-confidence, and they can get picked up very easily by the thousands of organizations who are expanding because of COVID-19, okay? And so you can't rest on your laurels and think, well, nobody's going to move anywhere because of COVID-19. That is absolutely not true. If you continue to create a workplace culture that falls short, where your employees are disengaged and where their needs are not being met, don't be surprised if they quit on you. And it's not going to be your low performers who leave. It's going to be your high performers, because high performers can write their ticket. Even in this type of an environment, even when the economy is currently where it is, we're going to bounce back, folks. So again, you've got to think about your employees' needs. Let's dive into each of these buckets so I give you concrete examples. Get the right person in every chair. This is who you hire and who you fire. Your managers have got to be hiring for a values match. Most managers hire for a job skills fit, right? These people have the requirements in the job description. Huge mistake. You have to hire people whose individual values are aligned with your organization's values. Why? Because when a person's individual values align with your values, that employee instantly feels an emotional connection to your organization. They don't even know that it's happening. It's subconscious. And their engagement instantly starts to grow. Okay? You also want to be making sure that you're hiring people whose values are aligned with your values, because your values are your culture, right? Examples of values are things like accountability, fun, innovation. Those things describe who we are and how we do things here. So you better make sure, as you're building this amazing culture, you're bringing people in who are role models for your values. Second, who you fire. And I want to preface this with a statement. I absolutely believe that every person in the world has the ability to learn and grow and develop. I really do. However, if you have people in your organization who have a toxic attitude, or who are incompetent at their job to the point where everyone around them is having to pick up the weight because they're literally failing at their job, and you have tried to develop them and they failed their development plan, these people need to be terminated. I didn't say they needed to be moved from marketing to sales, or they needed to be moved from IT into customer service. I said they need to be terminated. Why? Because when you have toxic employees in your culture, or people who are outright incompetent, and you've tried to work with them and they are not changing, you are breeding active disengagement in your company. Why? Because every single person around these employees know exactly who they are. And do you know what all the other employees are thinking? Why isn't senior leadership doing anything about this? And in that moment, you are breeding active disengagement among your engaged workers. You have got to have the confidence and courage to remove these people from your organization. So what do your managers need to do in the get the right person in every chair bucket? They need to hire people for a values match. They need to put people on a performance improvement plan who have a toxic negative attitude or who are incompetent at their job. And they need to remove people from the organization who fail their performance improvement plan. Show of hands. How many people No, there's somebody in your organization who doesn't belong in their chair, right? They're getting a buy. When I ask this question live, 98% of the hands go up in the room. This is something that organizations don't like to deal with. Again, I see a comment about unionized or people who have tenure. I understand that sometimes there are rules, also in Europe, right, where people cannot get fired. If that is the case, your manager needs to focus some serious one-on-one time on these people to get them to improve. And if their attitude still sucks, or if they're still completely incompetent at your job, then you need to move them into a position where they are doing the least damage, okay? You need to try to isolate them to the point where they are affecting fewer people as opposed to more people. Because I'm telling you, when these people are in your organization, these toxic people, it spreads, and you do not want that. You're never going to create a great culture unless you make sure the right person is in every chair. Bubble 2, goal alignment. When we ask people, workers, why do you get up and go to work every day? 80% of people say, I want to add meaning, I want to add value, I want to make a difference, I want to be connected to something bigger than myself. The easiest way for you to do this is goal alignment. When your CEO writes his or her goals, they need to be cascaded out to the entire organization. And then every individual goal in the company needs to be written in support of the CEO's goals. Why? Because when everybody in the company has goals that are written based on the CEO's goals, two things happen. One, you're all marching arm in arm together toward the same North Star, biting off those 3 to 5 goals. Also, you're going to make serious progress toward those goals, because when everybody in your organization is working toward, knocking off the same goals, that's when you're going to have success. If you have 100 people in your company and everyone has 5 goals, right? That's like 500 different things that you're focusing on. Then all you're going to do is make incremental progress in 500 different areas. You've got to get everyone aligned, marching together toward the same North Star. And the easiest way to do that is by, again, cascading goals, getting people's goals aligned with the CEO's goals. Let me tell you a story that is a perfect example of this. In the early 1960s, our former President Kennedy went to the NASA space station in Cocoa Beach, Florida, because, as you know, he wanted America to be the first country to set foot on the moon. He was walking through the hallways and he came across an employee who happened to be a janitor. And so our former president said to the employee, "What do you do here?" And the janitor replied, "I help put men on the moon." He didn't say, "I help clean toilets." He said, "I help put men on the moon." And why did he answer that way? He answered that way because at that time, NASA's leadership team got it. They understood the importance of everyone's individual goals aligning to the mission of NASA, aligning to the vision of NASA, aligning to the goals of NASA. And this is powerful stuff. This causes people to engage. And so, as you know, when we talk about goal setting, that's quickly followed up with performance management. Gone are the days of annual performance management reviews. You guys, you've got to be conducting performance management reviews, formal reviews, quarterly or even monthly. And if you're going to say, "Jill, my managers can't do that," they absolutely can do that. And they can especially do that if your CEO has 3 to 5 goals and everyone's individual's goals are written in support of those 3 to 5 goals, right? Then you're all marching in the same direction. It makes that conversation really, really simple. And so here are the 3 things that your managers can do in goal alignment. They can rewrite with employees individual objectives based on the CEO's goals so that people feel that connection. They can shift to monthly or quarterly performance management conversations that are formal, and they can also give ad hoc performance management feedback in the moment. So no manager should be waiting until the formal meeting to tell someone that they're doing something well or poorly. When someone does something well, tell them that was amazing. This is why it was amazing. It will cause them to do it more. When someone does something poorly, the manager has the opportunity to say, you know, I've got some ideas on how you could have potentially done that differently to get even better results. Okay, those are the three things your managers can do in goal alignment. Build a two-way communication culture. Employees tell us that in order to be engaged, they want to have a voice at work and they want their voice to be heard. You guys, right now, 50% of workers in the world are millennials. By the year 2025, 75% of the workers in the world will be millennials and Gen Zs. These people were born with a smartphone in their pocket coming out of the womb. It's the truth. They are used to bombarding people with communications. They are used to being bombarded with communications. The average millennial sends 1,500 text messages a day. And then they're going to go into your company and they're going to hear from the CEO once a year. They're going to hear from their manager once a month. No one's going to ask them what they think. It's not okay. It drives active disengagement. So here are a couple of things that your managers can do. They have got to be having weekly staff meetings, okay? And they're not going to lead the staff meeting. Each week, somebody on the team is going to lead the staff meeting and communicate what's going on the team. Lead that meeting where they're asking people to give their updates. Because you want to know what? When you hand the reins off to an employee to lead a staff meeting, you've basically said to that person, I trust you, run with this, right? You've got to give everybody on your team a voice and enable their voice to be heard. It's not always the manager who should be leading. Also, something I call quarterly conversations. Once a quarter in your company, come up with a question. Give that question to every single manager, and then that manager should have a one-on-one conversation with everyone on their team in that quarter. It will enable your employees to have one-on-one communications with all of their people who report to them. What's a great question to start with? What do you love about your job? And what do you dislike about your job? What an amazing question that would enable an employee to feel like they have a voice and their voice is being heard. Also, another thing manager can do, focus groups. So gone are the days when a manager can just make a decision that affects people on the team without getting the input from the team members. And so you've got to conduct focus groups. So when there's a decision that's going to be made that affects all team members, the manager can easily conduct a focus group and say, I'm going to be making this decision, but I want your input first. Tell me what you think. Trust me when I tell you, when that decision is made and the manager then goes out and says, thanks for your input. I heard you. Here's the decision that was made, and here's why the decision was made. That decision will land on people so much better because they'll know that the managers just didn't go into a corner office and make it on their own. They leveraged people's thoughts and opinions. So in two-way communication culture, your managers can do weekly staff meetings and rotate the leadership, quarterly conversations, and focus groups. Finally, recognition. Companies spend billions of dollars a year on logo branded socks. You guys, do people love free swag? Absolutely. I love free swag. However, a pair of free socks is not going to stop somebody from quitting on you if your culture sucks. You've got to create a culture of what I call rampant recognition. This is where your manager is recognizing people constantly. This is where your employees have the opportunity to recognize one another constantly. You guys should all be creating values cards. This would be like a 4x6 postcard where you have your values printed on them and people can check off the value that the person lived. You can write to Amy from Joe, customer satisfaction. And then there could be a line where the person writes exactly what Amy did to go above and beyond with customer satisfaction. You can have these being as e-cards. Another thing you guys all need to create, a wall of honor or a wall of fame. You can put this on your intranet where people are just posting the amazing things that individual contributors and teams are doing. Another thing that you can do, a clap out or a clap in. When somebody joins your team on their first day, put together a Zoom video conference, or if we go back to having lots of people live, Give that person a standing ovation, right? For being a part of the team. If somebody on your team does an amazing thing, set up a 15-minute video call. Just have everyone on the team be showing up in the various quadrants, clapping. Nobody needs to even say a word. This is so easy. Let's say we all go back to having an office space. You've got a new employee. Every single person should follow that person out of the building, clap them out of the building. These are simple things that you can do to let your people know that I work for a company that gets it. They acknowledge people, they appreciate people, they recognize people. You guys, when you focus in these 4 areas, you will drive massive levels of employee engagement. And I understand that as an HR professional, you probably often feel overwhelmed because you're responsible for so many critical things. And you're probably going to leave this webinar thinking, I'm going to go back, engage a senior leader. We're going to focus in these areas because we know these areas drive engagement. But maybe 10 minutes from now, you're going to check your smartphone. You're going to look at the next meeting that you've got to go to, and you're going to feel overwhelmed and not know how to sort this out on your own. I know that this may seem like a lot, but if not you, who? If you do not make that commitment to start the conversation with your CEO, you are going to get the same mediocre results as it relates to employee engagement year after year after year, because you know and I know that traditional approaches don't work. Return to your workplace. Let your CEO know that you have a proven strategy to increase productivity, customer satisfaction, retention, and profitable revenue growth, but you can't succeed without them. That is how you're going to create a new reality for yourself and for your organization. And to help you in your endeavor, we're going to move on to the Q&A in a second, but I've got a book called If Not You, Who? It's available on Amazon. It talks about those 4 areas in depth. And then also I've got a new online course, the Employee Engagement Academy. And so many times I stand by an organization's side and teach them how to fish, right? Teach them how to build a great culture. But I can't stand by any organization's sides right now. So I took the exact process that I used with companies to increase engagement between 5 and 33 points in 6 months, and I put it into an online course. So it's available to WorkTango webinar people for 25% off. There's the link if you want to check it out. Because what I can assure you is that if you are not deliberate about creating an amazing workplace culture that meets people's needs, you're going to end up with a culture by chance, and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be mediocre at best, and mediocrity does not drive business results. And so what are your key takeaways? Put people first. Believe it doesn't have to be difficult, and partner with other people in your organization to champion this. As the title of my book reads, if not you, who? You chose to be a leader, which means you're a dealer in hope. And with that choice comes an enormous responsibility to ensure your organization succeeds. The quickest path to that goal is to re-engage your disengaged workers. Your disengaged workers give you scraps, and your engaged workers give you blood, sweat, and tears. It's the truth. And for that reason, your disengaged workers offer you the greatest untapped potential for you to improve productivity, performance, and profitability, period. And then finally, I just want to thank you for being with us today. You had the choice to attend this webinar. You saw what the topic was going to be about, and you signed up, and you're here. And your presence here tells me that you get it. And for that, I applaud you. Never, ever doubt yourself or your ability to meet or exceed your employee engagement goals. You have everything inside of you that you need to succeed. Everything. You have the power. You always did. You just need to go back and unleash it. And with that, Rob, I would love to get to the questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me actually unshare the screen here so that it's a little easier to see
Okay.
everyone. First things first, I mean, I'm in my third stint here of growing companies, and there are two things that really resonated with me. One was just hiring values, not skill. Even at WorkTango, we don't have values, we have what we call virtues, a little different, but we also have what we call a passion statement. This actually sits on my shirt here. It's to improve work lives. And if your eyes don't light up for improving work lives, no matter what your role is, I don't care if you're building technology, if you're dealing with customers, then it's just not a fit, right? And I think when you build that group of people, that's what's been able to elevate and grow the company. And one thing I thought was really interesting was the concept of what I call participative management. By that is actually at WorkTango, that's what we do. We have employee surveys, understand sentiment. But if you're just asking for whether they're happy or not, that's only half the battle. You really need to know the why. And when they're a part of that participative management, their recommendations, their suggestions, and what you said, Jill, was then you go back and say, listen, this is actually what we did based on feedback and the why, because sometimes we can't always execute someone's idea as a recommendation. Yep. They're part of the process, right? It's not being done to them, it's being done together. So just two things I've seen dramatically impact engagement, and I like there was two of those things as part of the repertoire. So that being said, a number of questions in 6 minutes. My gosh, I don't think we're going to get through them all. But I also have people upvoting them as well. And the first one that was uploaded the highest, I'd love to get your thoughts, is how do you handle one or two disengaged employees while the rest of the team seems engaged and productive?
Again, you ID these people. You do single them out because you've got to know where those spots are in your organization, because you don't want their negativity or their incompetence to spread. Okay. And so again, it's the manager's responsibility to ID any people on their team who need to be put on a performance plan. And again, you need to be incredibly open and honest and transparent with these people that you are working to build an amazing workplace culture, and that you feel as if that either their attitude or their job skills, really need to come up a couple of notches in order for them to be the right fit for the organization. Then the manager needs to say, and you're not in this alone, I'd be more than happy to work with you on the plan, to help support you, to guide you. At the end of the day, it's up to you. It's a choice as to whether or not you're going to choose to grow and change and be the person who we need you to be. But I'm here for you 110% because we want you on the team in the future. But whether or not that becomes the case is really up to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Next question is an interesting one. I think we're all collectively writing the book on how to handle this COVID situation, because there isn't one that exists. But the question came more specifically to a comment on onboarding and how do you keep people engaged in onboarding via virtual worlds in this specific time like COVID? Any recommendations or stories companies have been conducting?
Yeah, so a lot of research has been conducted lately with remote workers, and we know that remote workers need they say there's three things we need, the 3 C's. We need communication, we need collaboration, and we need connectedness, okay? So keep those 3 things in mind. You can't over communicate. You can't have too many opportunities where team members are getting together and so you're connecting them and they're collaborating, right? And so I think onboarding has always been a really important thing, but now that there's potentially no physical onboarding, there's a lot of things that you could still do. For instance, send that care package to the employee's home, right? Have a virtual lunch with the employee on their first day. Send them a gift card so that they can go to a local place and get lunch, right? So the manager and a new employee are actually physically eating lunch together over Zoom. Make sure that you do maybe a team huddle at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, probably the end of the day, where that employee gets to meet virtually all of their team members. Maybe you do a happy hour at the end of that day where everyone brings a cocktail and talks about what they're binging on Netflix, right? Not work-related stuff. And so it's really about you making sure that your new employee not only gets to know their team members from a work standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. And again, there are lots of fun things that you can do with Zoom or really any type of a video conferencing, again, where you are connecting that new employee to their team members, where you are enabling that new employee to collaborate with their team members. I think with remote working, it's really important that you link that person up with a buddy, right? A person who could just really help them navigate the company and the department and the team potentially. And then again, the manager needs to be really hands-on with recognition, with communication, with just really supporting that employee and showing them that they are there for them 110%.
Cool. I love the clap-in idea. And one thing we try to do is, because when you're socially and you're using those types of tools, do what I call a love bomb, just to make sure everyone is sending messages that first day and multiple times a day. It really makes a person feel great.
I love it.
This one's a really great question, in my opinion. And it says, how do we disengage leaders, since we need them to champion the employee engagement?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. Data. So I'll be honest with you. The vast majority of senior leaders care most about, and it's just the truth, right? Because most of us are publicly held firms. Senior leaders care about turning a profit for the shareholders. It's the truth. Senior leaders tend to have incredibly big egos. They can tend to be narcissistic. They care a lot about success. They love data and they love numbers. Gather data that shows the correlation between employee engagement and increased retention, increased customer satisfaction, increased profitable revenue growth. That's your best shot you got at this. If a leader sees all of that data and says, no, I don't believe this, or no, I'm not going there, in all honesty, you're dead in the water. You've got one other thing that you could do. You could try to find another senior leader in the organization to champion it, but your CEO is going to be the strongest person in that role who can engage your managers. But you've got to try, right? Even if that person has never believed in this in the past, don't give up. Gather that data, bring the data to that CEO in a very thoughtful way, and do everything in your power to get them to see the light and to embark on the journey with you. Great.
About a minute left, so we'll go to the most voted one at the top from Lee, and says, what recognition have you found that actually works? We have got a lot of pushback on it is not deserving, it is just people's jobs to do this. Is it based on values, tasks? What is the criteria and frequency, and who nominates? And then, as it needs to be authentic and not just calling someone out to check a box. I'm happy to even take this offline. I spent 11 years helping companies just with recognition strategies, but I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. Wow. It seems like it might be overcomplicated. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's a long question.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying recognition doesn't have to be difficult, right? Recognition is thank you. I mean, I just recognized you, right? So it's really important for you to create a culture of rampant recognition where everybody can recognize everybody else, not just managers and leaders recognizing. And also, I don't believe in guidelines or rules. I think you just need to create a culture where people lift one another up and support one another on a regular basis. Culture is how we do things here. Well, that's just how we do things here. Nobody should have to pull out a policy or a program, because when you start doing that, it gets difficult and it gets hard. And saying saying thank you is not difficult or hard. It's easy and it can be done all the time. And so, yes, there are some guidelines that people should be given, like it needs to be done in the moment, it needs to be genuine, it needs to be specific, right? Those are 3 guidelines. But beyond that, give people reins. I do believe recognition programs steeped in values are effective because it's an easy thing to do. But I also think a lot of companies drop the ball where they don't allow all employees to recognize everyone else, right? It's just something that managers and leaders are given a budget for, and that never works.
Yeah, I found it needs to, everyone's so caught up in the dollars of it, but there's extrinsic motivation, but the biggest, easiest thing is the intrinsic motivator of recognizing someone.
100%. Your words are so powerful.
We could spend all day on this and the rest of the day, but unfortunately we're out of time. There's so many questions we unfortunately didn't get to. My apologies, but it does share with me that I think there's a lot of just interaction and excitement around the topic today. So that being said, first off, a big thank you to everyone who showed up and participated. We love building this community and we'll continue it. So thank you, and apologies we didn't get some of your questions. And Jill, just a big thank you to you. Just the ability to donate your time, your passion, and the ability to bring us all together in a time when it's really hard to do so. So that being said, thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you for creating such a committed community.
Awesome.
You've done an amazing job of engaged people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the recognition. Everyone have a really good rest of the day. Be well and be safe, and take care.